Shopify is the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources that were once reserved for big business. So upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. Believe me, my fishing company that I started 5 years ago with my best friend Aaron called Woo Tungsten. Actually, it's pronounced Woo Tungsten because that's the sound you make when you catch a giant fish. Woo! We started this company 5 years ago, November of 2016, and we've been on Shopify since day one. We sell tungsten fishing weights, and our business would be nowhere close to where it is today if it wasn't for Shopify making things so incredibly easy. And like mine, Shopify powers over 1.7 million businesses from first sale to full scale. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. You can gain insights as you grow, and they have detailed reporting of conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/bluewire. That's all lowercase for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/bluewire right now. That's shopify.com/BLUEWIRE. Shopify.com/bluewire.
What is crack-a-lackin', Hardwood Knocks listeners? I am Dan Favale coming at you once more without my fantabulous co-host, Adam Frommel. Our team look-ahead train plows on, though. We're up to the Memphis Grizzlies. Sharon Brown was nice enough to come back on the podcast after doing this exercise with me last year. She's the Grizzlies beat writer for the Memphis Flyer. She's been published at Dime Up Rocks, Basketball News, The Athletic. She also has the Shy Show podcast. Follow that show on Twitter at The Shy Show 4, spelled exactly as it sounds, and follow her on Twitter, Sharon Shy Brown, at Sharon Shy Brown, SHARON, Shy Brown, spelled exactly as it sounds. We have a great talk about the Grizzlies. Before we dive into that, let me just remind you to please continue rating, reviewing, and subscribing to Hardwood Knocks wherever you get your podcasts. Subscriptions help us a ton in the charts. Also, it helps us if you head over to iTunes, whether or not you use it, search Hardwood Knocks, throw us that 5-star rating, write a review. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell us. If you didn't enjoy us, tell us. We'll take that into consideration, but throw us the 5-star review anyway to help us in the charts there. Follow us on Twitter at Hardwood Knocks. Go ahead and follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com, search Hardwood Knocks. We will come up. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Hardwood_Knocks. Would just like to reiterate, since we are probably getting a few first-time listeners each episode, stragglers, people here at random who just really want to hear about the Memphis Grizzlies, whatever. If this is your first time around these parts, we cover the NBA at large. We do a pleasantly sub-mediocre job of doing so. Consider throwing us that permanent subscription. We are happy to have you as part of this wonderful community. I've gotten so many direct messages about people who have enjoyed the series, about questions and follow-ups to the series. I genuinely do appreciate that. Glad you guys are listening. I know our regular listeners who come to this podcast, really, I'm sure for just NBA at large talk, you guys have shown up. It's in the downloads relative to these single team look aheads and even multi pods per day. This is the second time we're publishing a second podcast on the same day. So I appreciate every single person who listens to this podcast regularly, downloads every episode. And I, of course, endlessly appreciate anyone who just listens in general, whether it's your first time or not. That's enough warm and fuzzies out of me, though. Let's go talk Memphis Grizzlies with Sharon Brown. Sharon, thank you so much for coming back on the Hardwood Knocks podcast to talk some Memphis Grizzlies with me in advance of the start of this season. First and foremost, though, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I have zero complaints over here. Lots to take in the basketball world. I was telling you before we started, I'm ready for, well, I wish the offseason might have been a little bit longer. I'm ready for preseason to end. I don't know about you.
Right. I think the season started back too early. I was used to the December start time because we just got over it in July. So I thought maybe they probably should start in November, December instead of October. but I know they're trying to get things back to normal right now.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers that there isn't an influx of injuries because they pushed it up yet another month after what was like, the past 2 seasons have just been obviously truncated as well. I think the best place to start is the Grizzlies had a fairly busy offseason, and I was just wondering what your general thoughts were about everything they did, the direction that they kind of tipped their hand that they're headed as we begin the regular season.
Well, so I don't think they are in a win now mode.
Mhm.
I think it's just like they're doing moves that going to, like, say for instance, I think they're still building, but then they're sort of not. And I think it's just like a lot of things were salary dumps. But because like some of the trades in the offseason I didn't understand. So it's just like, I trust the front office know what they're doing because, I don't get paid the big bucks to, do those things.
Right.
That's above my pay grade. So I just think that they're trying to, it was salary dumps and things to that nature. And it's just like I knew they weren't gonna go out and try to get a all-star free agent or things to that nature since they're a small market team. But I think it's something they were trying to build upon the future.
Mhm.
And then and I think the main thing is to try to get Jaren Jackson Jr. that contract extension.
Yeah, and I respect what they did over the offseason because I think after making, maybe call them 2 surprise playoff bids, some teams might have talked themselves into we do have to act with more of an urgency. But looking at the Valanciunas trade specifically, and then just in the larger context of they have, people romanticize future draft picks, but they just have a
Mhm.
nice stash of future draft picks now. Where if they ever want to make a win now trade, or if they want to take more bites at the actual draft apple, I think the fact that they went that route, yes, we need to see
Mhm.
what comes to bear, but it could have been tempting to not do that. And so I actually really respect that they took the longer term view, knowing that John Morant, even Jaren Jackson Jr., who, yes, he's extension eligible, but they're both still super young. Now is the time to try and take those bigger swings to flesh out, a, a more something better than an average or above average core around them.
And then it's just like the Grizzlies, they have a type that they are
Yeah.
after. Just like they want a good IQ guy, and then they want someone to come in there to mesh with the people in the locker room. They don't want anybody to disrupt what they are having in their locker room right now. Because it's just like you just don't go out and get a player. He may be good at basketball, but he may be a locker room cancer. And it's just like just don't want that right now. They want the person to come in, mesh with the guys.
You had mentioned Jaren Jackson Jr. already, and I think people were overly concerned about how he played when he came back after basically missing most of the year last year. Have you seen anything from him in preseason that, like, his shooting is always going to be fine? They've tried to use him on the ball a little bit more during preseason. How have you felt about how he's performed in that way? And just this season, what are you looking from his game for him to really improve upon, given that he is probably long term Memphis' second most important player right now behind Ja?
Okay, so with Jaren, I wish he would cut down on the fouls because he's so important. He needs to be, in the lineup. He needs to be healthy in order for them to win and go to the next level. And he has improved on his rebounding. It's better than what it has been. And he just have to stay healthy. And then it's just like I know he shoot the threes, but I would want him to use his skills and drive to the basket more.
Mhm.
But he also said that Steven Adams being there, it has helped him with the rebounding. He said he's watched him, and then he's taken some pointers from him and on the rebounding. So I think the rebounding is the biggest issue, for him that he, because I think like during the preseason, I think he had like he's averaging 7 or 8 a game, right now, and that's a big difference from his career only like 4. But hopefully, that picks up and it lasts all season long. And then, like with the foul trouble, he needs to, defend without fouling.
Is there they've they have thrown the ball to him in the post during the preseason. They've even run some just like dribble handoff stuff with him. Is that like something you would like to see them do? Because you mentioned how you don't want to see him just be a shooter. And so I don't know that that stuff is always going to look so pretty because it's fairly, I don't want to say new, but it's nothing that they've done in high volume with him in the past. Are you in support of them like really trying to test out the depth of what else he can do on offense this year?
Right, right. Because it's just like he needs to be a post player, sometimes, not all the time, but it's just like but the coach want them to shoot threes, but I think he need to use Jaren in the post more.
And the thing that I didn't really even think about just now is they could use someone to punish mismatches down there now that they no longer have Jonas Valanciunas. The
Right.
the other question I had for him is, do you think that they're going to play him more at center this year? You mentioned this to me beforehand, and I don't think it was the expectation that anyone thinks he'll start games at the 5, but do you think they'll give him more run at center over the course of the year?
I think so. He probably be a center, with the bench unit,
Mhm.
maybe they put him at the 5. But I think long as Adams is there, I think Adams would start, and then Jaren would be the 4. But I think he probably would be a center, um, like when the bench unit is in and Adams is on when Adams is on the bench, and then they probably use him, say for instance with Tillman or either Brandon Clark together.
Mhm.
We'll see how that works out.
So what happened with Brandon Clark last year? Like, do you still think he's going to be a fairly like he basically fell out of the rotation by the end of last season? Do you think is he still like a prominent part of what this team is trying to do, or do we think that, or do you think that Xavier Tillman is kind of more of an important player to them moving forward now?
Brandon was hurt. Brandon was dealing with some injury issues that wasn't reported because, like, during the preseason games, it seemed like he's, been himself. Because, like, last season, it seemed like he was lost out there, but I think he was dealing with an injury. But I think it's just like they have room for both Tillman and, Clark.
Mhm.
I think they have room for both of them. But I know some people were saying that, Brandon probably will be traded, but I don't think that's the case because, since he had an injury. He's healed now. I think that he just, he's back to his normal self. But I think it's just a wait and see, with him.
I would argue there's definitely room for both of those guys if Clark is playing well. When you look at Xavier Tillman and Brandon Clark, I guess it might become a little bit harder if you want to play, Kyle Anderson any minutes at the 4. If you want to use Jaren Jackson Jr. more at the 5, because then you're taking certain minutes away at those positions. But I don't look at this team and think, oh, they have too many 4s and 5s on this roster, so you can't have both Clark and Tillman in your rotation.
But like with Kyle, he's interchangeable. He can be a 4 or he can be a 3.
Right. And I mean, that's the luxury of him. One of the players on the Grizzlies that I'm most watching closely this year, though, is Desmond Bane. I don't want to read too much into summer league, but he was just absolutely fantastic. I didn't know he had like the ability to run pick and rolls like he was there. Do you, one, think that he'll have a bigger role in year 2? And just the second part of that is, do you actually expect them to put the ball in his hands a little bit more on the offensive end?
Yes, because in the preseason, I think that was one of the reasons why they got rid of Grayson Allen to have more of a role for Desmond Bane and DeAnthony Melton, because I feel like it was a logjam at in that place. They had too many guys doing really basically the same thing. And then like with Grayson, it was like the lack of defense or whatever, but he's a good shooter.
Mhm.
But I think Bane is just like he went up a notch because like preseason has, came over to, I mean not preseason, summer league has went over to preseason where he's doing the same thing. It's just like he's not scared. It doesn't seem like it just seems like it's translating, and hopefully it translates to the regular season.
Uh, John Morant, all things John Morant are always interesting. I think one of the things I was most impressed with him last year was a heightened willingness to take threes, and he really started hitting them at a higher clip towards the end of the season. And I think, look, that doesn't have to be everything. I know a lot of people, including myself, can maybe over sensationalize outside shooting, but it does change the way that the defenses have to guard him and respect him. Do you think, based off what you saw last season, just the feel heading into this season, do you think we'll see like another jump in his long range shooting this year?
Right, because it's just like it seemed like he's been working on his mid range, like during preseason. He's been taking, more pull up jump. He's not just going to the rim. It's just like he's in preseason. He been getting anything that he wants. Like how he performed in the playoffs against Utah.
Uh-huh.
It's been translating over to the preseason where he's getting anything he wants, and he's developed a mid range.
Yeah,
A mid range
oh,
jumper.
sorry. Go ahead. My apologies.
Yeah, he's developed a mid range jumper, and then it's just like he's been highly efficient with that.
And that's like you would definitely like to see him be better on defense, but if he starts hitting off the dribble jumpers, whether it's those in between looks like you're talking about, punishing defenders for going under on screens from beyond the arc against him, that's like, people call it a swing skill, but that if he does that this season consistently, like that's what kind of separates him from like fringe all-star territory to actual all NBA territory, where if he's doing that, he's probably in that conversation as one of like the 5 to 10, 11 best guards, 12 best guards in the league, which is knowing how many talented guards there are, just the backcourts in general. That's a pretty big thing to say. And so I feel like because of how some other players might be, more polarizing, you look at like the Ziaire Williams or Luka Doncic's, like those young guys, we've almost forgotten like how high Ja Morant's ceiling is within the context of the other, young cornerstones in the NBA.
Right, and then it's just like seem like what he's doing seem like it's just been contagious, with the whole team, because it's like when they're playing in preseason, like them games really don't matter. But it seems like when they go out there, it matters to them. Seems like it's mattering. It's just been on a whole nother level, watching them doing preseason. And like I said, I hope it translates to the regular season. Because if it does, the West is gonna be it's already tough. It's gonna be really tough. Especially if you have because last night, their preseason game, I think Morant averaged like 27 points, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. had 20 points. So if they keep doing that, those two, wow, the West it's gonna be hard. Hard, hard, hard.
Yeah,
But I think, they're one of the teams that you really can't count them out. Like people have counted them out like the last 2 seasons. Still don't count them out again because they feed off that.
Yeah, I'll count myself among the people who wrote them off the past 2 seasons. So I think out of fear, I probably just won't do that again. And the other thing about Ja Morant too, if he's hitting those shots, is how much more unpredictable he becomes with the ball in his hands. And all of a sudden, he shot 61% at the rim last year, which is slightly above average. That number probably goes up a ton just because of what defenses are worrying about with regards to him in other parts of the floor. And so just by even taking those looks, you mentioned those mid-range jumpers, I think it probably just opens up a lot of his game and then just opportunities for those around him, because Ja Morant, I think people also, this gets lost in translation with a lot of what he does. He's just a spectacular playmaker and guy who can find others even after he's leaving his feet.
Right. Right. He just need like his teammates to shoot the ball. Get the buckets. Because it's like one preseason game I was watching, and he did like a really good behind the back pass. And he was in the air. I was like, wow. Then he dished it out to his teammate, for a 3. Then the teammate missed the 3. I was like, man, when Ja Morant, give you a pass like that, make the bucket. Make the bucket.
Yeah, I don't know how you.
It's a waste. It's a waste. It's a waste you not making a bucket when he give you that great pass.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to look him in the eye after the game if I missed a shot off of a pass like that.
Right.
Before we started, we were talking about their starting 5, and I just assumed once Dillon Brooks comes back from that broken hand, that the starters would be Adams, Jaren Jackson Jr., Kyle Anderson, Dillon Brooks, and Ja Morant. You basically laughed me off the podcast when I said that. I'm just kidding. But what do you envision for this starting lineup moving forward this season? Or I think you mentioned something before we started about maybe it will be more matchup based. Do you have any starting 5 locks outside of Ja Morant for them? I'm very curious to see how that shakes out in your mind.
Well, I mean, the starting 5 locks I have is only 3: Steven Adams, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Ja Morant. But the other two, like, well, Dillon Brooks, of course, when he comes back. But it's just like I don't know if he's going to be worked into the rotation or not. But I'm thinking it's going to be interchangeable between Desmond Bane, maybe DeAnthony Melton, and maybe Cal Anderson. But during the preseason, Cal Anderson has been coming off the bench, and I don't know that if that, like I said, I don't know if it's going to translate beginning of the regular season or not, but he's been coming off the bench because like since Dillon is out, Jenkins has been starting Melton and Bane, and then I think last night he started Bane and Conchar. I'm not sure because I didn't watch the beginning of the game,
Mhm.
but and last year he tweaked the lineup sometimes or whatever. But I think basically some of them going to be based on matchup. But I think the given is Brooks when he gets back, JJJ, Adams, and Morant, and then the other one is it's going to be basically due to matchup. And if Bane is doing really good, he probably win the starting lineup out.
If he can defend any better to where it's not like this, it'll be a drop off just looking at how versatile Anderson is. And we know what Melton can do defensively, obviously, but if he can defend fairly well, like that feels, if you're trying to go with like the building the best absolute unit that could be perfectly fitting, all Bane can do on offense feels like that might make it a no brainer.
Right. And then it's just like, it's just like I know people too put, too much into starting. I mean, but to me, the most important thing is who's on the floor when you're trying to win the game at the end. It's not who starts for me, it's who finishes the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, say for instance, you need shooting. Of course, you would go with Desmond Bane. If you need defense, you go with, Anderson or well, God, Melton.
Right.
I'm getting the names mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, a
But
lot
it's
of the
just like,
times oh yeah, go
but
ahead.
who are the starting five? The game on the line. Who are the starting five you would have out there to win the game?
Yeah, I mean, some of those decisions are sometimes even based off like, well, how do we maximize the second unit? Like, if you just don't think you have
Right,
enough shooting off the bench, then it makes more sense to bring Desmond Bane off the bench.
right.
Um,
But I'm not sure, But I think Jenkins' mind is probably a matchup based thing.
yeah, he does seem to come from that school of coach, so that is a great point. I am wondering if you have any early impressions of Ziaire Williams, who swayed me with a couple moments in summer league, but I'm just curious as to see when you look at how many options this team has on the perimeter, and knowing that he is considered more of this long term project, you expect him to get regular minutes with this team as a rookie.
I think he's gonna get minutes, but it might not be many. And he's a good defender. He can defend, but I think it's still just a learning process for him. He's not gonna get as many minutes probably as like Tillman and Bane got last year. I don't think so. It all depends on how he perform, I guess. I'm not sure, but it's just like that's like a long term project thing with him.
I know the shooting percentages don't always align with it, and that included, dating back to him in college, but it just feels like there's going to eventually be a really good offensive player there, at least on the ball. And again, maybe I'm just reading too much into looking at how he looked. It wasn't even always his performances in summer league, but I'm far more intrigued by him than I was when they actually selected him at number 10 in the draft.
Right, but because I don't think like his college career, I don't think that's really who he was, with that. Because like there were so many variables going against him, during his that college season. We just probably can just wipe that away and just give him a fresh start once he's a rookie in the NBA now. And I think that maybe they're going to give him some time to go play with the hustle. I'm not sure, but it's just like a learning process, for him. And I think he's gonna be fine. I think he need to put on a little more weight, because he's tall and lanky. But I think he's gonna be fine.
I wish I had that same problem, let me tell you. Will Jarrett Culver play for this team?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I have no idea. And just like I'm being honest, because it's just like I haven't seen anything really out of him to, boost, any playing time for him.
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure at all.
I feel like maybe if they thought they could steal some minutes where he's at the 4, he might have a clear path to court time, but that trade, even knowing that Culver is a former number 6, or not former, there was a number 6 pick 3 years ago, it feels like that trade was just, like, more about breaking up, a bigger contract into, like, smaller contracts.
And then it's just like Memphis, just like it's the place, where what they call the reclamation projects with certain players, it's just like they're deemed to be bad players, this, that, and the other. Then they come to Memphis and then they get a new leaf on life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I know he's played in only 2 preseason games, and the kind of the
Hmm.
fact that John Contra feels like he's been featured a little bit more, I just don't know how well that bodes for Jarrett Culver's place in that rotation. So I'm very curious to see if they wind up trying to do anything with him.
I'm not sure at all. I have no I don't know.
Shopify is the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources that were once reserved for big business. So upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. Believe me, my fishing company that I started 5 years ago with my best friend Aaron, called Woo Tungsten. Actually, it's pronounced Woo Tungsten, because that's the sound you make when you catch a giant fish. Woo! We started this company 5 years ago, November of 2016, and we've been on Shopify since day one. We sell tungsten fishing weights, and our business would be nowhere close to where it is today if it wasn't for Shopify making things so incredibly easy. And like mine, Shopify powers over 1.7 million businesses from first sale to full scale. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. You can gain insights as you grow, and they have detailed reporting of conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. This is possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/bluewire. That's all lowercase for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/bluewire right now. That's shopify.com/BLUEWIRE. Shopify.com/bluewire.
When it comes to hiring, there is no shame in needing an assist to score. Indeed has helped businesses stay competitive with their hiring, and they can do it for you too. Get started right now with $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/bluewire. Indeed is a hiring partner that gets you what you really want, a short list of quality candidates as fast as possible, because you can do it all. Attract, interview, and hire all at Indeed. Get a $75 credit. You heard me. At Indeed.com/bluewire. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy. Whenever I was looking for a job, Indeed was the very first place I go. Indeed.com/bluewire. Offer valid through December 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
What Memphis ended up having, in part, they were really strong to close the season. They ended up having like a league average offense last year. What do you think needs to happen for this team specifically as a collective for them to make a bigger jump on that end of the floor, to be closer to, let's say, top 10 on the offensive side?
Make their shots, just like make their 3-point shots. That's what they have to do, because Bane, he should be better. Jaren Jackson Jr., he's a good 3-point shooter. Dillon Brooks, when he comes back, it's just like that's the coach philosophy is to let it fly. They need to get better on that 3-point shooting, and I think that will help the offense, especially when you have a guy like Morant,
Mhm.
where he can have the defenders come at him and he kick the ball out, make the shot when he give it to you. That will help your offense a lot because he's going to draw defenders.
Do you think that they've surrounded him with enough shooting yet? Because a lot of that feels sort of contingent upon Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton, matching those career best clips they shot from three last year.
Yeah, but I think that I think it's okay. You know, um, they just have to get better at it.
The other thing with this team, they're seventh in defensive efficiency last year, and they were, kind of hell to go up against. And they could force turnovers. Their defense was, excuse me, they were 13th, not seventh. I don't know why I said seventh, but they did like a lot of stuff and were aggressive. Do you see them being able to improve with this personnel on offense this year? Did they get better on defense over the offseason, or do you think maybe it's more of a lateral thing for them defensively?
Um, as long as they could defend the three a little bit better, I think they'll be okay. But I think the defense probably be a little better, maybe because like John Morant, I think he's getting a little better on defense. He's been blocking shots in preseason. He's been getting his steals. His man hadn't been beating him that much. So I think they're a little bit better because they work on things over the summer you know to try to get better. But I I have no idea, but I just think that they should be better, guarding the three.
And they do. I mean, when you look at their individual talent, they could build some really good defensive lineups. And if you get, you mentioned some improvement from John Morant. If the team as a whole, and then also Jaren Jackson Jr. is able to, defend with their feet instead of their hands and not foul as much, I feel like there's a lot of low hanging fruit for them to improve upon. And just based off some of the individual personnel they have, when you look at Melton, when you look at Dillon Brooks, when you look at Kyle Anderson, that this could be like one of those sneaky teams that might be able to crack the top 10 in points allowed per possession.
And then I think also that new rule, about the offensive player leaning into the defender is going to help Jaren Jackson Jr. and Dillon Brooks tremendously
So that's a great
because
point.
though that was some of those fouls that were called on them.
Whether it's like a specific position here or just the skill set and idea of a player, what is Memphis's biggest weakness right now heading into the season?
Um, Injuries. We need everybody to be healthy, especially Jaren Jackson Jr. Because it's just like the team is not really going to go far unless he's healthy. Him and John Morant to be the 1-2 punch.
Do you think that Jaren Jackson Jr.'s sort of injury history at this point is going to prevent them from signing him to an extension, or do you expect the deal to get done before the season rather than in restricted free agency next year?
Um, you know what? I'm not sure on that, but I don't. It may happen. While the season is playing out. Depends on how they start, but they have time to get it done. I don't think they're in a rush.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that he'll be a restricted free agent, so they would have all the matching power. If there is an extension, I'll just be curious to see the number on it because he's clearly a very talented player, a very important player. It's just,
Hmm.
it feels like his career has had a lot of stop and starts, which makes him difficult to judge.
Yeah, and then it's just like his first year. This is me talking. I don't really believe that he was. I think he could have came back early from his injury, but since they weren't playing for anything, they set him down. And then, like during the bubble before he was hurt, I mean, he was playing out of his mind. Then
Right.
he got hurt in the bubble, and then you know, because it's just like people like he's injury prone, but he's really not. I mean, like I said, the first year he healed, and then they just kept him out because they didn't have anything to play for. For they played for the lottery pick. But other than that, they didn't have anything to play for.
Yeah, he's had one you could call a major injury, and so that's probably not
Right.
enough to call him injury prone, even if it is, just concerning. Um, this is subject to change as the season moves forward, clearly, but as of now, who do you think is the player that's most likely to get traded before the deadline this year?
With the Grizzlies,
Yes,
before the deadline,
at the
mm,
deadline, whatever. I mean,
that's hard to tell because it's another player that got it, but I can't think of his name. Um, is it Kendrick Nunn? Is it
Chris Dunn, is that who you're thinking of?
Chris Dunn? Yeah, Chris Dunn. Yeah, because I don't think have we seen him in preseason?
I have not seen him in preseason. You would have definitely have watched more Grizzlies preseason than I would have, but no, he has not played in the. Oh no, he has played one game in the preseason.
One game. Hmm.
17 minutes and he scored 0 points. Incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
I'd be curious if Kyle Anderson gets trade buzz because he's in a contract year, and I think he's a player a lot of teams would want. And if Memphis does fall out of that postseason or play-in discussion before the middle of February, uh, rather than thinking about, oh, are we going to pay him in free agency if we can get more assets for him? It feels like he is going to be one of those players who's in pretty high demand.
He might be in high demand, but I really don't think that he'll be one of the ones that they trade, but I don't know.
I also think just
It's a lot of stuff I don't know because it's just like, Memphis is not a win now team. So
yeah, they're tough to peg. Do you view, and you might have had one of the all-time quotes of this podcast last season when you called Dillon Brooks on offense Dollar Tree Kobe. He gets that mindset. Do you view him as
yeah,
like a core piece for this team though, long term?
most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. Because, it's just like look how he played in the playoffs.
Yeah, he has like all
He was
defense potential when you look at some of the
he was on
assignments he has
another
tackled.
level in the playoff. And then it's just like I said, the new rule, for with the fouls, I mean, that's up his alley. Because a lot of those fouls, the offensive player, was coming into him and he loves that. And then, he's ready to get back on the floor.
We could probably also do this with a lot of players, but if you just envision him like making better decisions on offense or just being more consistent there, you're talking about a player who becomes exponentially better or more valuable. Where it feels like on offense, sometimes he tries to play
Right.
like a bull
Right.
in a
I
china
think
shop.
yeah, he does, but I think he got, a little bit better instead of, he's trying to win the game himself. But, he trusts his teammate more and then his assist numbers went up a little bit.
You already alluded to this when we were talking about the starting five. Who do you think in close games down the stretch should be their go-to crunch time lineup? And this is matchup dependent as well. But if you had to pick a most used crunch time lineup for them, what would it be?
Okay, so I think it would be Jaren, Kyle, um, Dillon, and Desmond Bane.
I like that. I like that one a lot. I'm just because I'm such a big fan of Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. at the five that's a structure that I'm always going to love.
Yep, that's the lineup.
Do you think Melton could probably work his way into that conversation for some games?
Absolutely, because he's a workhorse. I mean, he works hard. If he was better with his shooting last season. If he get better this season, most definitely.
Yeah, I mean it's easier to play, a lot easier to play him next to Ja if he's hitting his threes, especially at the clip he hit them last year. He was at over 40%, right? So like that was a
Yeah.
just an astronomical leap for him. Is when you look at this roster, is there like a unconventional, quirky, or weirdo lineup that you would like to see them roll out at some point this season?
A quirky lineup.
Maybe one that Taylor Jenkins isn't going to play, but you would like to see him play.
Okay. I would like to see Ja, Jaren, Dillon, Brandon Clark, and Desmond Bane.
I dig it. That's a pretty cool one. I'd be curious to see what Clark and Jaren Jackson Jr. accomplished defensively together. We just haven't seen a lot of that in action because of injuries to both of them at this point.
But one game, I forgot the first season that they played together. I don't remember what game it was, but when Jenkins had Jaren and Clark in, I mean they was so good on defense that game, and then it's just like I love that lineup, with those two. But hopefully he can they can do that again this season, some games. Because I really think the injury that Clark had last season really hindered his sophomore season, and I think he has something to prove.
If there was something that was hindering him, I think you could see it in sort of the way he was playing on offense specifically. It just didn't look like something was right on that side of the floor.
Right.
As we record this, their win total over under is set at 41.5. Are you taking the over or the under on that?
It's gonna be over there.
Where do you
have? Let's see. I think they probably win like 48 games.
48?
Yeah. I still think that they're gonna be at the bottom of the West.
So you think they're gonna be what, like 6, 7, 8 in the West? Is that what you're saying?
Something like that. And then all of this is due to predicated on if they stay healthy.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's a risk is just that because we've seen them do it over the offseason where they made the bigger picture moves, if they do become, sellers around the trade deadline or something to that effect, where they just decide that they're going to prioritize the bigger picture even further and not, this is not a tanking team. They're too good to be a tanking team, but they just might decide that making the playoffs is not a top priority for them right now.
Right.
Is there anything about this team or anyone on this team I didn't ask you about that you think needs to be discussed?
No, not really. I think we discussed everything. But I think that Desmond Bane, he's going to have a breakout season as well, just like Jaren Jackson Jr. Those are the two players, to watch. Besides Ja Morant, but I think Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. are going to be two players to watch, and I think Steven Adams is going to be really good for the team as well because he's already teaching players something because he's been working with Brandon Clark, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. complimented him last night. He's been watching him. He's been helping him, be a better rebounder. So I think Adams is going to be good for the team too because I've heard him in post-game comments. It's just like he said he's been watching the team, from afar, but he just wanted to come in and work and do whatever he can to help them win.
And do you expect him to get like real minutes where we know he'll start, but he could be sort of a quick substitution? Do you think he like gets to 25 minutes a game? Is it going to be fewer than that?
Yeah, I think he gets 25 minutes per game. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense too, because, if you're just replacing Valanciunas, he averaged over 28. So even if you spread some of those minutes out amongst others, there's still playing time for Adams for sure.
Yeah, he's a really good defender. He's a better defender than Valanciunas was. And then in a lot of the Valanciunas shots, he was when his buckets came from Ja's misses and everybody else on offense misses. He had a lot of putbacks and things of that nature.
Sharon, thank you so much for hopping on to talk Grizzlies with me. Are you able to just tell our listeners where they can follow you on Twitter and find all the great work that you do?
You can find me at Sharon Brown, and then I'm a Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Memphis Flyer.
Awesome. And that's just to echo at Sharon Brown. It's spelled exactly as it sounds. She's a great follow on Twitter. Does a great job covering the Grizzlies. Sharon, thank you so much for coming on again. You did this last year. You're nice enough to come on again this year, and I very much appreciate it.
I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
What's up, everyone? It's NFL Hall of Fame wide receiver Chris Carter. And yes, I'm back, and I'm hosting a new podcast called Wide Receiver One, presented by Blue Wire and WinBet. I'm going to be talking to some of the best wide receivers in the game today about every topic that is related to football. Listen to me on Wide Receiver One on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.